So we are going to be looking at the alternate future of the world. This is a series that I've tried to do before, and it did okay, but I just didn't really like doing it or recording the episodes. So we're going to do season 2. Also, no, do not go back and watch the old alternate future. They're bad videos. And there's not really any tie. This is more just the World War I map. We're going to be starting in World War I. If you guys do end up enjoying this episode, make sure to like and subscribe. And let's go ahead and get into this episode. So we are in the year 1913, on the break of World War I. And over in the United States, Woodrow Wilson has been elected as the 28th President of the United States. He plans to develop the country, but now we need a time jump to 1914. Specifically, June 28th, 1914. An Austrian man is, just gonna do a quick little drive down over to Bosnia. He's driving through the city of Bosnia, which I don't remember exactly what city it was. Then some bombers throw some bombs at his car, which almost blow it up, but he escapes, and then he goes into hiding. That is until he comes back out to meet the officers that were injured inside of the bombings. But as he is driving to the hospital, he is found by one of the assassinators, and he is shot. The Austrian leader is devastated, but he more knows that Serbia has something to do with the assassination of the Archduke. So he goes up to his old pal, the German Empire, and he asks Germany, should I send an ultimatum to Austria? I want to, but I'm not sure. It's up to you. Should I? And Germany, after recently forming the German Empire, they're going to be like, oh, why not Austria? So Austria sends the ultimatum that is pretty much impossible for Serbia to actually do. And when Serbia refuses to do the demands of Austria, we see the Austria-Hungary declare war on the Republic of Serbia. At least I think it's a republic. Russia then joins in on, not that side. Russia joins in on the war on Serbia's side to protect them, which then Germany joins in, helping out Austria. And I just realized I think this border is wrong right here. And in fact it is. I don't know why I did this border. I am sorry for the inaccuracies. But now we need to get back to the war. Then the French join in on the war because they had a secret agreement with Russia, more a defensive pact. And the French are going to be like, yo, British, you got my back? In fact, they don't, and they decide to stay out of the war. Montenegro also joins. So Germany, they are going to have to fight a two-front war against the Russians, but they also have to fight a front against the French. And in Austria, they have to fight a front against Serbia and Montenegro. Germany and Austria are going to go down to their ally in Italy and request they join the war, but they refuse because the Triple Alliance is a defensive alliance, not an offensive one. So Italy is not required to join in on this war, and they're not gonna. Fighting starts on the Serbian-Austrian border, with Austria-Hungary crossing into Serbia. We also see them make small advances into Montenegro, but a broad army of Serbian nationalists are going to go ahead and punch into these areas of Austria-Hungary. Because, if you didn't know, Austria-Hungary is very unstable right now. Russia is probably going to take a long time to get ready, so here's Germany's plan. Go through France, capture Paris, wiping out France in the process, then switching up and completely destroying Russia. But there is one problem, and that is the French-German border. The French have a very heavily defended border against the Germans, and it would suck to go through that. So what are the Germans going to do? Well, they are going to go ahead and force their way through. So they go around through the Benelux, quickly moving through Belgium. They get pretty far, and that is until the Brits join in on the war. With this push into Belgium, they are able to get behind French lines, but now there's a bigger problem in the British. This does lead to a pushback, but they are well into French territories by now. The Russians are now ready for war, and they're starting an invasion into Germany, as well as into Austria, like a pretty big invasion into Austria. So the Germans are going to have to pull troops off of this border over here, which does lead to a French pushback, as well as up in Belgium. But when German troops do get here, they do manage to push back against the Russian front. The Austrians also start a pushback, but the Russians do manage to push into these northern areas of Prussia. Italy is in secret contact with the British, and after the British offer some Balkan land, we go ahead and see Italy join in on the war on the Allies side, no, on the Entente. The Austrians are going to start an invasion into Italy, capturing the city of Venice. Turns out Italy wasn't super prepared for this war. Over inside of Serbia and Montenegro, the Austrians are pushed back, and now a full invasion is happening. Over in the Benelux, we see the Germans fully push the Belgians out, and now have a solidated front inside of the French area. The British and French are calling out to help for the Russians to do something, because by now they have been pushed back out of Germany, and are starting to be pushed out of Austria even more. So the Russians put a lot of what they have into invading more into Austria. This not only distracts Germany more, and they manage to push back the Germans, but Italy also manages to push back the Austrians a little bit. It is right here where we see Bulgaria join in on the Axis side. Never mind the Central Powers, I keep getting World War II and World War I mixed up. But we also see the Ottomans join in on the war, because they want their Crimean lands and their Caucasus lands back. The Ottomans start an invasion into Caucasia, and it's going quite well. Bulgaria starts a move into Serbia, moving into the Macedonian lands that they want. This also allows for a pushback up in the Austrian front. Germany also restarts their invasion into France. Austria pushes more into Italy, this time reaching major success. Back over in the Caucasus, we see the Russians pushing back the Ottomans and making an invasion into the Ottoman Empire. Germany, feeling confident, launches a full-on invasion into Russia, focusing up inside of the Baltic areas as the Russian army is collapsing. They get moved back to about right here, but we also see them getting pushed back inside of Austria, and the Austrians also move into Russia. I also forgot to color in all the colonies. And by now, we also see Canada join in on the war. Portugal is also getting pretty fetishy with the Allies, or the Entente, so we see them also getting a war declared upon them. Over in Italy, the front is collapsing. The Italian people are kind of over the whole union thing. As nationalism decreases, the remaining Italian forces in this area flee to France, and an Austrian and German army is free to move down the Italian peninsula. With barely any fighting, the capturing of Rome happens, and Italy surrenders. But don't worry, because Greece has just joined the war, and they start a new push into Serbia, as well as into Bulgaria and Constantinople. They manage to take Corsica. A further push into Russia takes place, as we see the Bolshevik Revolution taking place. Petersburg is captured, and we see the Russians surrendering. Like in real life, the Russians are going to cede over some land over to the Central Powers, and we see a new invasion of Cyprus, and the recapturing of Constantinople, and the pushback of the Greeks. It is not going well for the Entente, as the British are begging the United States to join, but they are still refusing. The Ottomans push into Egypt, and the Germans use Italy to invade into French Carthage. A massive push into the French areas of Africa takes place. We also see a push into the British areas down in the south, as German forces are pretty much doing really well. We see Somaliland being captured, as well as the capturing of Kuwait, and an invasion of Arabia. Soon after, Paris falls to the Germans, and France surrenders. The Portuguese leave the war, the Greeks are finished off, and the British, after realizing there's nothing they can do, leave the war as well. The Axis have just won the war, or the Central Powers, because for some reason I keep getting those confused. And now we need to look at the World War I peace treaty, or the Treaty of Versailles. First, Austria annexes these lands of Italy, and now we need to look at the division of the Union of Italy. We see the return of the Kingdom of Two Sicilies. Then we see the Papal States. Then we see the release of Tuscany. And then we see a new country being the Northern Italian Federation. But moving just west, we actually see the Austrians and the Germans granting these lands over to the Northern Italian Federation, because this federation is one of the strongest of the Italian states, and it is now a direct ally of the Germans and Austrians, kind of replacing Italy in the Triple Alliance. Germany is going to annex Luxembourg, as well as Belgium. We then see Germany giving themselves these lands from France, just in case for a preparation of a future invasion of France. The British are not allowed to hold any naval vessels inside of the English Channel, and they have to give up Gibraltar and Cyprus, and maybe some of their colonies, but we'll talk about that. Also, Sardinia and Corsica go over to the new Northern German Confederation. Over in Serbia, we see the Austrians annexing Montenegro and the northern parts of Serbia. And we see Bulgaria annexing these parts of Serbia, getting everything they want, mainly these Macedon areas. We also see them annexing these parts of Greece. And we have the establishment of the Bulgarian Empire, or known as Greater Bulgaria. Over in Greece, we see two new countries forming. We see the Northern Greek Confederation, kind of like the Italian Confederation, and we see the Southern Greek Democracy, pretty much just Greece underneath a new name. All of the islands in the Mediterranean go over to the Ottoman Empire, as well as Crete and Cyprus. The Ottomans also get these parts of the Caucasus. They go ahead and annex Kuwait. Now we need to look at the Russian Empire. First, Japan takes over this area on this island. Next, we need to set where, the land that the Russian Empire or the communists gave over to the Germans. And that's about all of this. So let's go ahead and drop these new borders. First up, we need to see Finland, in which the Finnish are going to be granted more land for allying up with the Germans and the Central Powers. Next, we see Estonia being released. Estonia is going to control all of the Baltic land, so this is all Estonia. Right here, we see a buffer state forming, being Poland. Of course, after the Germans take a little bit of Russian land. We see the release of Ukraine, and right here, we see a kind of like country, I'm going to call it the Kievan Rus. Pretty much, it is just a massive buffer state between all of the new countries that Germany formed and the Soviets. The Germans also forced the Soviet Union to give up Caucasia, so that way they don't have this area to confederate or just oil. We also see the Crimean area right here going over to the Ottomans, and that is the division of the Russian Empire. We see the Ottomans annexing this Arabian land, as well as Djibouti and Eritrea. The Germans unite Somalia and Somaliland. The Germans go ahead and annex Nigeria into their Cameroon colony. They also go ahead and annex Angola from Portugal, as well as Mozambique. Same thing happens with the DRC or Congo. Because Belgium no longer exists, all of their lands went over to the Germans. Now all of this land right here is going to go over to the German Empire, or probably known now as the German Colonial Empire. And this part of Africa is very big. Austria is going to go ahead and annex Libya, as well as take over the unexplored lands right here. We also see the Austrians annexing parts of land over inside of Egypt. Egypt is released, and Sudan is the last part of the British Empire, or the British Colonial Empire. That is up in the northern area of Africa, besides these, but these are more western. The Germans annex British New Guinea. And that is going to do it for the peace treaty of World War I. If you guys enjoyed this first episode of Alternate Future of the World, make sure to like and subscribe. I don't know if I'm going to be doing these as much as Wixo Season 2, at least when it comes out. Anyways, I will see you guys in the next episode. Goodbye.